So my name is Guillaume Pigé. I'm the artistic director of Theatre V. I directed The Nature of Forgetting and I performed the role of Tom.
My name's Alex Judd. I'm co-director of Theatre V with Guillaume, associate artist, and I composed the music for The Nature of Forgetting, performed the role of the multi-instrumentalist as well.
We move first, we play first. We come together and then little by little, through playing, through moving with objects, with each other, with sounds, little by little we figure out what is it that we want to make. So when we first came together, what was in the room were the desks. I really wanted to work with the desk. The bike was in the room as well. The question that I gathered the team around, something that we were interested in exploring, but we didn't have any solutions. We were just interested in exploring was, what is eternal? What was true yesterday? What is true today? And what will be true tomorrow? What is eternal? And little by little, as we sort of worked on the show, the question became, what is left when memory is gone? And I don't think we found the answer to the question, but the show is our response. This is what is left when memories is gone.
I basically was involved right from the very start of the project. That's the way the company works. All the collaborators, all the devisers start in the room together. So the music basically started from scratch with everything else, but then also kind of grew with everything else as well. As we tried ideas, we improvised together. Kind of the music started to emerge from these few questions that Guillaume was asking us, along with the movements. So everything kind of grew organically together and somehow we made a piece.
Well, we've never done this before. It feels a little bit like, it's quite surreal. Very good sense in the sense that usually we devise a show with the company and then we tour it and then we make another show and then we tour it. So it's the first time that we're given the opportunity to keep exploring an existing piece of work with a team that is not our team. So that is really exciting. Because obviously we've been doing the show for a number of years now. So it's quite exciting to be able to revisit the work from the outside. So Alex and I are both in the show. So it's true that we tend to sort of lose track of what the whole thing looks like. So just to be given that opportunity to sort of look at it again and sort of keep developing it, keep refining it, keep sculpting it is just really exciting. And then there's a context of doing it within, a completely different, culture. So I think something that has been, in discussion with the team, how could we make it relevant, accessible to Korean audiences without changing the show, but at the same time making sure that it makes sense to have a Korean cast, playing the various characters. And it's been a very interesting debate. I've learned a lot.
It's been a really interesting challenge for me personally as well, because it's devised with everyone in the room. You create a piece of work that is where everyone is so important to the show and everything is so closely connected. So the two musicians and the 4 actors and the lighting as well, everything is so closely connected. When you're teaching someone else that, you really have to make sure firstly that they reproduce what you've created, because there's so many cues that they have to hit, otherwise the show just doesn't work. Firstly, the important thing is that we kind of teach everything about the show that we know. Then the next step, what Guillaume has alluded to, is how can the performers then start to make the show their own? How can they change little bits here and there to kind of exert their own influence on that show to make it more personal to them, which has been, I guess, the really interesting part of it.
It's the first week of rehearsal happened on Zoom, because obviously arriving from the UK we had to self-isolate for a week. It's never been a setup where the actual first encounter happens on Zoom, and that's what happened. And so on the first day I really had no idea, because some of the actors I never met. I never met the musicians. So it was really interesting to see the potential of what is possible, digitally like that, what can be achieved. So the potential of it, but also the limits, and how, by the end of the week, I think we'd reached, the maximum of what we could have achieved on Zoom. And then it was brilliant to be able to come back and be in the room with everyone. So I was really impressed on that first day, because obviously I had no idea what to expect, by the quality of the work from the performers, the focus, the commitment?
Yeah, for me, I think the process has been just pure joy. It's been an absolute pleasure to work on this with a Korean cast, and been so professional in the way that they approach learning the show and listening to us and taking on board our feedback. Yeah, it's really quite humbling to see Korean cast take on something that you've created and do such a fantastic job with it. It's been wonderful.
What's great is when they're also challenging it. So, so they're questioning some choices, and that's really exciting because it really makes us think about actually why. Can we do something better? How could we keep transforming it, keep changing? Because the work that we do, it never finishes. It's never finished. It's always constantly evolving, transforming. So what's exciting is to carry on that conversation with this team at this particular time, in this particular place. How can we carry on, changing, transforming, growing together? I find that personally quite exciting.
Yeah, we've performed the show over 100 times now. Even though it does keep evolving, I think it's quite difficult sometimes to look at it from an outside perspective. It's really interesting to hear the Korean cast's ideas and questions about the show as well, because they can offer a different perspective that we can't, which really helps the strength of the show.
There's a bike scene in the show, quite an emblematic scene of the show, and at the end of the bike scene, there's a moment. We never really found how to sort of best place the imagination, and then Zicha, one of the performers in the show, I asked him, make an offer, try to make it work, and he did, and it's brilliant. I wish I'd thought of that. So that's great, and it means that they really take ownership over it, physically, imaginatively, emotionally, psychologically. So that's quite exciting.
So sitting here at this desk, these are the exact desks I had at school. So even just looking at this just brings back, like a flood of memories and nostalgia. I remember being at school one day and I just kind of lifting up my desk as I would every day, and then there was a note inside, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I opened it up, and there's a little note that said, I can still see it so clearly and so vividly. It said, I love you, Alex. Love from Sally. So Sally is this girl who I was completely in love with. I mean, as much as a 10-year-old could ever be in love, I don't know. But I was just completely obsessed with her. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. She definitely didn't feel the same way. So, but when I saw this note, I just remember the feeling of like euphoria. And she sat right next to me, so that was a strange thing. So happy after reading this note. And it was the best day of my life. I was just like bouncing around everywhere, and then I got home and I realized it was the 1st of April, which is April Fool's Day, which means it was all a big joke. And I've been scarred for life ever since.
However, we did use some of that, because we do share a lot of stories when we make the show. So I think somehow we use that story within the show. I think it's something impacted the work. I think I remember being costumed as a leek to recite poetry one day, and I just thought I was given this great opportunity. Thinking back, I'm just thinking, why would you put me in a leek costume to recite poetry? I'm quite puzzled. But first of all, just remember it as an experience, as a unique experience. I think people see a lot of things that there's a lot on offer. Yeah, just to remember it, to inspire them, to change them, to move them, to change the way they feel, and to change the way they think about the people they love around them living with dementia. I think would be quite important for us. Obviously, what's exciting about this piece of work is that it was devised with people living with dementia, with their carers, but also with scientists. So there's a lot in the show that is directly taken from the science. And so in a way, the piece is also a way to sort of share, communicate information about how memory works, how forgetting works, and why do certain things happen to people living with dementia. The loss of spatial awareness, for instance, changes in behavior. We don't necessarily associate with dementia, but actually it is part, it is part of it. So, and we portray that in the show. It's not because they're not able to construct memories or construct new memories that they've necessarily changed. So hopefully the show will shine light on that and make that accessible to people who will come and see it, and it will help them in some ways deal with the tragedy that it is.
Yeah, for me, I think I really hope that the audience will be able to connect with the show in some way and go away leaving the theatre having maybe an idea of changing their life in some way, even if it's just a small thing. I think for me, a true entertainment and true theatre in this context is when you see a show and then as you're watching that show, you kind of lose yourself in the show a little bit, even if it's just a few minutes. But if it just takes you away from whatever else is happening in your life. So if people come and watch the show and can just kind of forget about everything else just for that 1 hour, or even if it's just for 5 minutes, and lose themselves in that show in their imagination for that short amount of time, then I think that's extremely rewarding for us as artists to be able to have that effect on people.
Yeah, and if they could leave the theatre with a big smile on their face and a little tear in their eye, I think job done.
Bye-bye.